hello Aaron, how are you both?
I am good, thank you.
Great, it's great to see you both. Maria, how have you been? How's your day so far?
It's been very busy, actually. It's been very busy. It's been like back to back to back, and then I just about made this one. So yeah, it's been very busy for me today.
Excellent. So it's such a pleasure and an honour to welcome Aaron to the Expertise Library. How are you doing in Grenada, Aaron? How is everything going with you out there?
Yeah, doing good, thanks. Feeling a lot better this week. As we were saying, the restrictions are starting to ease up just a little bit and giving us a bit more flexibility to get outside and actually get to the beach and have a swim in the ocean, which has been just a great, relief physically and mentally. So I'm hoping that, it's really going to change the atmosphere here on the island.
And I'm just curious, what is the sort of the mental, emotional temperature of the island? Are people quite resilient? Are they ready to just get up and go and start moving around, get the island back up and running, or what's it like out there?
Obviously there's a bit of fear factor involved with the unknown and the heavily reliance on the tourism industry across all sectors. But Grenada is just such a beautiful and friendly place. I've had to go out the last couple of days and get around the island, and you can go right up into the middle of the forest areas where some rural communities are, and people are still smiling. Everyone's still, in a relatively positive mood, and people stop and say good morning. And so, there's not a real sense of desperation here. It's more of a what's going to happen next kind of a mentality.
That's good. That's very encouraging. I was fascinated because we were just talking in the pre-interview that we connected a few months ago, and I was really intrigued and fascinated and delighted by your product, which is extremely unique, which is Blue Light Caribbean Gin. Can you just tell us, start off telling us about yourself, your company, and why you decided to produce such a unique product as Caribbean Gin?
Yeah, one of the attractions to the product specifically was because it is different and unique, which comes with it kind of having to pave our own way in through uncharted territories and kind of almost re-educate the industry here that you can actually do other things besides what has been done. We've got some amazing rum distilleries here in Grenada, and personally I also enjoy drinking rum. One of the best things about Grenada itself is that it is actually the spice island here in the Caribbean. So it's just got this amazing array of natural resources, and gin, as opposed to rum, is quite a flavorful array of different botanicals. For instance, in our gin, we have 15 different ingredients that go into it alone. And we use things like the local nutmeg, cinnamon, the coriander, 3 different types of citrus that grow here on the island. It's just like an abundance of natural resources in Grenada that haven't really been considered for gin and the gin industry. So that was really, one of the main driving forces for creating that new product. And the other thing too was just we wanted to highlight the Caribbean in itself, and we've tied in a lot of our marketing into like the beauty of the islands, even into the labeling that we choose, like all of the colors are matching, like the beautiful Caribbean water here. So, everything we're trying to do is basically highlight the reflection that we have as people living here in the islands, of somehow what we can do to bottle it and then share it with the rest of the world.
Mm. And how do you, why gin and not, say, vodka or scotch? What drew you to gin? Because gin is, if I'm right in thinking, Maria, it's associated with the UK. It's quite a British drink. It's mother's ruin. I think that's the kind of urban myth. It's actually was the protagonist in a few paintings that were Thomas Hobbes, Gin Alley, and women being drunk and babies falling out of their arms. But when we spoke a few months back, I said to you, I noticed that there has been a resurgence of gin production, flavoured gins, especially over the Christmas time. But why did your company yourself, why did you focus on gin in particular?
I think because there has been like almost like a gin boom in the last year, and people have really become fascinated by it. So much so that, like, I have a friend in Scotland who also has a gin distillery, and he said there's like, now there's like hundreds of small distilleries in Scotland alone making gin, and then one of the big attractions is like locality, because once you start getting gins produced in different locations around the world, they can use products that are native to that region and then infuse that into the product, so you can get just a huge variety. So when you say gin, I mean, a gin that comes from London, or a gin that comes from Scotland, or a gin that comes from Italy, or a gin now that comes from the Caribbean can all be considered gin, but have completely different flavors and completely different textures. And I mean, as the gin industry is kind of evolving, it's basically rebranding itself, and it's getting away from that, that old school, in the back of your mother's pantry kind of gin that only comes out that reminds you of, a childhood memory. It's coming to the forefront of people's cabinets, and it's coming to the forefront of bars around the world, so much so that there's just bars, especially in the UK, that are gin bars.
Yeah.
And they're specialising in gins from around the world.
Yeah, and there used to be in the London Cocktail Festival, there is actually just a gin bar where all they do is drink different cocktails with gin in it. There's even a bar crawl with just gin cocktails.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. And do you find, Aaron, that the demographic of the drinkers, of the consumers of gin has changed? Because primarily, or the history or the tradition of gin, from my perspective, what I've observed is that it's for middle-aged 50-something, give me a gin and tonic, or bon viveurs, it's people of a certain age, I would say 50 and above. Are you discovering that that's still the case, or are you attracting a different age demographic of gin consumers?
Yeah, it's definitely changing. Like I was saying, we're kind of not re-educating, but providing alternatives here to a lot of people that would never have gone and bought like a standard gin bottle off the shelf because maybe they had it once or twice when they were, you know, younger, and then didn't like it, and never went back to gin again. You know, we've had little gin parties here on the island where we're getting like a huge range of demographic of people coming in that never really liked gin, but liked the idea of seeing something different or trying something different. And so when they come, and I mean, if we had $1 for every time somebody said to us, you know, I don't really like gin, but this is good.
Yeah.
You know, we'd be doing okay, because basically it's just different enough that it can be completely separate to that gin that you think that gin should be. And that's what's really grabbing people's attention here, yeah.
So I detect from your accent that you are Australian. Is
Yes.
that right? So what, where were you born in Australia, and what drew you to Grenada for any particular reason?
Well, I was actually born in Singapore, so I grew up in between Singapore and Indonesia and Malaysia. I did most of my schooling actually at a British international school in Malaysia. And then I went back and did some study in Australia, and then I left, and I was based in the Middle East for a while.
Same as me.
And then I spent some time in South America and some time in the US. So yeah, I'm Australian, but I think in my whole life, maybe lived there for about 4 or 5 years in total. So I spent most of my time overseas, and focused a lot on traveling, and been to like 70 something countries. And so the last couple of years, decided to travel just a little bit differently, and sort of my mentality changed after spending so much time in so many different places and seeing the impacts of tourism, both the positive and the negative, because there is a lot of negative impacts of tourism. One of them being like, they're just flooding. They call it over tourism, basically like pushing places beyond their means. So I've tried to slow down travel as much as possible, instead of going to multiple places, just trying to spend a longer amount of time in one place. And the Caribbean was somewhere that I'd never really been. So my partner and I decided to come here a couple of years ago, and we first off started in the Virgin Islands, in the US Virgin Islands, and then we came down to Grenada. And it was just, I know something clicked, like, yeah, this is the place that we need to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just haven't really left since then. There's something about Grenada, it's just so beautiful and so friendly, and it's literally like one big community here on the island. It's just amazing. So that's kind of how we ended up here, and by that point didn't really know what we were going to do next. All we knew that we wanted to be here in Grenada, and so somehow we had to make that work. And just through meeting people and forming connections on the island, I connected with another guy who used to have a juice factory, and then decided that he wanted also to do something a little bit different, a little bit more exciting. And so the juice factory kind of turned into a gin factory.
Excellent.
And the rest is history up until now.